Greetings metalheads and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George and today I have another band you need to hear recommendation for you. Another recommendation of a band. If you're not familiar with these guys, you never heard of them, never heard their material, then you definitely need to check them out. Make yourself acquainted. So today I'm actually going down the Thrash avenue with this one. A band from the UK. They were formed mid-80s, had quite a short spell as a career, released 3 main albums, a few compilations and other bits and pieces along the way. They then split up, classic story, split up, late 80s into the 90s, reformed a few years ago and have done a few things since. But the main bulk of their catalogue was from the late 80s, from 87, 88 and 89 in fact, and I'm talking about a little band called Virus. I'm wearing my Virus t-shirt today, my Pray for War album cover t-shirt there, thought it was very fitting. So, Virus, as I say, from the UK, thrash with a twist. So not just a Metallica sound alike, not just a Slayer rip-off or anything like that. These guys were thrash with a bit of a punk edge at times, a little bit of a hardcore edge at times, but we'll get to that as we go. So, came across these guys, must have been about 2021, I believe, with the release of this little box set. This is Scarred for Life, so this actually contains all 3 of those albums. We've got Pray for War from 87, Force Recon from 88, and then Lunacy from 89. All very different albums and all very interesting albums. Hope you can see those there. I've got a few more props to show off in a second. But essentially came across this in 2021. This was released on Back on Black Records, who over the last few years, alongside Dissonance Records, have released so many killer box sets, really great compilations, those long lost and sometimes tragically forgotten albums. But now you can get hold of them again. It's really, really good. So, took a bit of a chance on this one. Couldn't really find much of their material around. I think I managed to track down one of the albums on Spotify after I had seen that this album compilation box set was released. Checked it out and I had kind of mixed feelings about it at the time, but I was prepared to give it a go. And I'm glad that I did, because I would say that Virus, although they had a very short-lived career, and really you had 3 albums released in quite quick succession, they're all very different, I think actually there's some real hidden gems here. If you like thrash, leaning at times in a sort of hardcore direction, then there's definitely something here you're going to enjoy. So, Virus. Let's talk about that first album then, which I have in multiple forms. So I have the CD, I have the vinyl, and I've got it on shirt. Now, the interesting thing is, this debut album, Pray for War, certainly the first time I heard it, I thought, this is pretty pants, to be honest. This is a bit rubbish, because the production is absolutely abysmal. It's absolutely dismal. Really raw. It's so scratchy and fuzzy, and the riffs really lose power. It's just a bit of a weird one. To be honest, it's still my least favourite. Over time, it's sort of grown on me a little bit, but it's very heavily leaning in the punk direction. There's this very punky kind of aggression and attitude there, the punk vocal style as well, and it's just not that great. I mean, the longest track on the album is on the second side here. I believe it's Night Siege. It's, weirdly enough, it's the longest track, but it's some sort of, if you imagine there was an audiobook of Terminator, or some sort of like sci-fi post-apocalyptic film or book like that, it's like an excerpt from that audiobook. It's just unnecessary. Some good tracks in the title track, Pray for War, because it's got that kind of punk speed metal aggression, a little bit kind of in the Venom vein, a little bit Motorhead, but not quite. TNT, Thermonuclear Thrash, it's a good song. Neo Warlords, Nuclear Gods, that's okay as well. But overall, I really failed to see the attraction here. Not an absolutely awful album that you can absolutely never listen to again once you've heard it once. But I would say that once you've heard it a few times, it's not really the sort of thing you go back to multiple times. So that's the first album from 1987. I could probably say check it out, but let me hear what other people's thoughts and opinions are on that one, because yeah, it's not the one album that really sticks out for this band, and it's also not the sort of album that you really feel like I've just got to put that on. I'm in the mood for Pray for War. But some people may disagree. I don't know. Let me know. In '88, however, we have the release of the second album. This is Force Recon. Again, these vinyls, I should say, they are coloured sort of splatter vinyls, and they're out on Back on Black Records. I question the nature of some of these splatter vinyls, because it looks a little bit like they've cheaped out. There's not really that much kind of splatter going on. There's just a few sort of green splodges here and there. And I think Lunacy as well, which I shall show. Yeah, it's a bit cheap in nature. However, it's still a cool thing to have, and I picked them up for next to nothing, to be honest. So, talking Force Recon. So Force Recon is a different beast altogether. It's got a great cover, really eye-catching. It just oozes that classic thrash. It's so bold and colourful and bright, and it really does look the part. It looks like thrash. That's what that looks like. That, to me, if you see that in the window of your local record store, not that there are many anymore, but if you see that, you think, yeah, that's going to be a thrash record. That font, that colour scheme, the imagery, that's thrash. And, funnily enough, it is thrash. By this album, we've now got an additional member. So it was a three-piece with that first album, Pray for War. We've now got the addition of Coke McFinley. So Coke McFinley joins the band on lead guitars. And I will say, he is a pretty solid guitarist. There is some really standout guitar work on this album. And for me, it's the guitar work that really does stand centre stage on this album. There's some blistering solos. There's some absolutely raw thrash riffs. There's also a heavy speed metal leaning, whereas those riffs on Pray for War, although there are some good thrashing riffs, the riffs here are very, very muted. It's very quiet, to be honest. And I know that's more a reflection of the production and the mix, but that does not pack the same sort of punch that this album does. Virus, Force Recon, much, much better. The opening track, Testify to Me, that is very, very aggressive. It's still got that sort of punk attitude and punk aggression there, but it's a thrasher. It reminds me, at times, this album in general, to be honest, reminds me at times of, shall we say, early Megadeth, maybe Killing Is My Business, through So Far So Good So What. There's kind of that going on. There's a little bit of early Anthrax as well thrown into the mix there. There's a few different sort of thrashing styles, a little bit of punk, as I say. But Testify to Me is good opening track, solid, quite a lengthy piece, about 6 minutes long, I think. But then we have Viral Warfare, the second track, which is actually an instrumental piece, and even more bizarrely than the fact that it's an instrumental piece, it is a long instrumental piece, and it's almost like Virus are trying to add in their version of, or their answer to, the Call of Cthulhu from Ride the Lightning. And it just kind of derails things right from the off, which is a bit odd. Force Recon, the title track there, that's a much better track. That's a thrashing track. It's heavy. It's got great guitar work. Vocals aren't anything particularly special on this album, I will say, but it's still a good track. It's a real reliable thrasher. Same with Release the Dead and No Return. No Return is probably a bit of a standout on this album for me. Then we've got BSSD and Hungry for Blood. Hungry for Blood is another real standout. So overall, I'd say this is a reliable, solid thrash/speed metal album. It's got some good aggression there. We've got some pretty solid drumming as well. The instrumentals are pretty flawless. It's just the production does leave a little bit to be desired. However, this is a good album. This is a really solid album. Much improved, shall we say, in formula and style and sound from that first album, Pray for War. However, I will say that the cover of Pray for War is also a bit of a winner. I think that's so cool. It's a little bit kind of sci-fi, a little bit some sort of weird Predator thing going on there. Anyway, now we get on to 89 with the release of Lunacy. Now this was the final album of those three, that initial era, if you like. And this album is a much better release. This album is absolutely solid, really good musicianship. The riffs are pretty killer. And like I say, Coke McFinley, or Finlay, absolutely brilliant guitarist. You cannot fault that guy's guitar playing, his riffs, his solos, his leads, absolutely brilliant stuff. So this album, this is a thrash album. Yes, essentially at its core, it's thrash. However, it does lean very heavily towards, shall we say, hardcore and the kind of stuff that we were getting from bands like Suicidal Tendencies, or much later on, shall we think of bands like Municipal Waste, that kind of crossover stuff. So there's a bit of punk in there, there's a bit of that hardcore vibe, but it's really good. It's really good. The real standouts for me kind of fall on the first half of the album. Seeing is Believing. That's quite a interesting track, opening track, but it's a thrashing track. It's got a little bit of a speed metal injection there, a little bit of a traditional heavy metal vibe as well at times. Lunacy and Bad Blood, both pretty thrashing tracks, I must say. The Pain Will Pass, definitely a thrasher. Again, you get great solid musicianship, but you get that kind of traditional heavy metal injection and speed metal vibe as well. State of the Art, another absolutely brilliant track. My Life is a very dark, kind of twisted track. It's the kind of the soundtrack to mental despair and desperation, which is a very interesting one indeed. A Sense of Freedom, good one, and the closing track, Don't Get Even. All brilliant tracks, but the first half for me is the real standout. But I would say this album is really fantastic. This is a hidden gem. This is the one that I come back to the most, I think, alongside Force Recon. But I revisit both of these albums quite frequently. In fact, they're just really good. It is a bit of a shame that these guys didn't manage to do more. You know, they were working at such a high rate of releases. You know, 3 albums in 3 years is pretty astounding. That one, see what I mean? You've got hardly any blue there. Come on. It's a splatter with not that much splatter. But, oh well. You know, not going to complain too much. It's still a nice thing to have. And like I say, paid very little for it. So there you have it. That is Virus from the UK. Thrash with a difference. Thrash with injections of hardcore. Thrash with injections of punk. You've got all these different elements going on here. But for a short-lived career, you've got some great material. And it is certainly underground. It's certainly deep. You'd have to delve quite deep to find this stuff. But I would honestly say, if you're a fan of early Megadeth, if you like early Anthrax as well, if you like punk and that kind of hardcore edge thrash as well, you're definitely going to like Virus. Certainly on this album, Force Recon, which is an absolute thrasher. Some really great riffs, particularly as I've mentioned on No Return and Release the Dead. Really brilliant stuff. Can't fault it, just the production lets it down a little bit. Then you've got Lunacy, which is all round a far superior album. Songwriting is great, the songs themselves are really memorable, the production is way better, it's a massive improvement. Really just a good solid album. Solid thrashing album with a little bit of a twist, with a little bit of an edge. So there you have it. Virus, a band you need to hear. Check them out. Pick up a copy of this Scarred for Life box set if you can. To be honest, this was just over a tenner, I think, on Amazon, just over £10. Not sure if it is still that cheap, but when I got it, it was only about £10. Really good little thing to have. Really nice little box set. Fits in the collection just right. So there are any other fans of Virus out there? Any other fans got the same feelings or different feelings about these albums, particularly Pray for War? As some of the things I have read online, some people really do dig this album. They absolutely love it and praise it all the while, and I can't really quite see the attraction, other than the art and a couple of tracks. But hey ho. Virus, band you need to hear. Check them out if you're not familiar with them. If you are familiar with them, let me know your thoughts and opinions on these guys. I'd be very interested to hear. Thank you very much for watching, my friends. Do feel free to like and subscribe as always. Be sure to check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good heavy things. Above all, take care, my friends, and stay heavy.